technique of the week, how to secure and finish a head and arm triangle. Now, one issue that a lot of people get when we start trying to work these arm triangles is you get this arm involved, and people can have good grips and they start squeezing, but once this arm comes into play, it's very difficult to get the finish. So we'll talk about how to deal with this arm. But the other thing that I noticed with people having issues with is not getting the actual choking arm deep enough. And what happens is a lot of times people will kind of go palm up initially, which means that my bicep is flexed. And when they enter into the arm triangle here with the bicep flex, there's really no extra room that you can go. This is the max amount of compression that I can have, and now it's pretty much solely dependent on my ability to sit here and squeeze. So one thing that I found to be effective is actually going palm down first. And what happens is when I go palm up, my bicep flexes. When I go palm down, it's squishy, it's relaxed, which means that I can really compress this nice and tight up against his neck. And then when I start to flex the arm, it adds a little bit more pressure, and I can actually make the arm triangle that much tighter, and it gives me a better chance of actually finishing that arm triangle from mount. So when I'm setting this up, right, we're gonna be in mount, I gotta deal with these hands, I'm gonna scoop the head, I'm gonna look to kind of isolate this arm. And a lot of times when I want to get this arm into place, rather than kind of like swinging my head down here or bringing my hands and head down here, a lot of times what I'll do is once I get this arm posted, my cross-face arm is actually going to grab into the armpit just to kind of hold this arm in place. And that will now give me time to where now I can go from here, press on the arm, now I can get my head into place, and then I'll post. What I'm doing with this post is just kind of holding myself here so that if he starts trying to bump and get me out of this mount position, I can use this rather than kind of going back and forth. Now, the second part of this is I'm now going to use my head and kind of drive into him a little bit, and I'm going to wiggle this arm to make sure I cut out all the slack. I want to get as much slack cut out of this arm as possible, and again, I'm looking to start palm down. So once I've got all that slack cut out, now I'm going to switch to my gable grip. And again, realistically, I'm not going to be able to turn my palm all the way up in this position. However, I can start kind of turning it almost like a hammer curl position, and once I get into this spot, I start curling, I squeeze. Now I'm going to get the finish, and it's nice and deep. If I turn this angle a little bit, I want to make sure that the crook of my elbow is compressed up against it, right? So when I get into this position and I'm trying to cut out the slack, as I pressure in, again, I'm doing this one so that he can't answer the phone, right? I'm making it difficult for him to be able to bring this arm down. That's one reason why I keep my head here. And then again, I'm just wiggling to cut out all the slack. I might even kind of push ahead a little bit, and then I fall right back into this position. And again, no slack, I'm nice and deep, squeeze, go into the hammer curl, and we can get the finish. The other thing I see people make a mistake of when they get into this position is they tend to kind of lean forward with it a little bit. They think like, oh, I gotta kind of pressure in. And what happens is I go from putting all this pressure on the neck to kind of now just smothering their face a little bit, and it kind of relieves the choking pressure. So instead of actually leaning forward, once I get all these grips into place, I almost sprawl my knees out a little bit, and I want to sink my chest down into them, and then again, I squeeze, and that's where I'm going to start creating just a lot of pressure and just make it extremely comfortable for them, while also, again, getting the actual choking pressure. So that's a couple details that I throw in there to, again, make sure that I can actually finish it. Now, dealing with this arm, right? If I get into this position, even before this arm comes into play, if I get into this position and I'm struggling to finish this, or he starts trying to answer the phone, right? I can still create a little bit more pressure, but now because of this, he's created a little bit more space. Well, I can't make any tighter, I can't reduce any more space with this arm, so the only other way that I can make it tighter is I'll switch to my elbow, and I'll actually reach and grab behind my head. Again, like I'm doing a rear naked triangle to myself, and now from here, I start squeezing, and more times than not, I can still kind of get the choke from there. You also get a little bit of a crank as well. But that's just one way to kind of deal with this if they start to answer the phone. The other option that we have from here is I'm actually gonna come up, switch to knee on belly, and I'm gonna kind of work off on an angle a little bit. This is gonna, again, just give me a little bit of a different angle. I'm still keeping the grips. The grips are never going, once I've locked the gable grip, the only change that I'm gonna do is go into the elbow and back to the gable. I'm never going to reset or open up this grip. I'm just gonna keep it here, switch to knee on belly, drive in again, squeeze. If that's still not working, I'm gonna take my chin and start kind of bringing my chin up and over. If his hand wasn't here, feel like I wanna put my chin right into his eye socket, right? And I just wanna start kind of adding that pressure to it, squeeze, and I can still just add that much more and make the arm triangle that much tighter. So you should realistically be able to finish an arm triangle from mount. That's honestly a preferred way to do it from here, so that if I lose this position, well, guess what? I'm still a mount, and I can just keep going right back to it. And then again, anytime I get this arm across, I can just go right back into attacking it rather than having to constantly come off here like I see people do, where now I'm giving him the ability to kind of go belly down and turn into me and start coming up. Or I get into this position, and again, he starts turning back up into me, and I lose that position because now I don't have anything. So I would rather be able to finish and secure it from a mount, work off to the side and come back into mount if I need to. But again, kind of one more time going through all of it. I hook the head, I isolate the arm. I'm gonna grab underneath the armpit here, post out, and as I post out, or if I push this arm, I get my head into place there. I can make whatever adjustments I need to. Again, I wiggle this arm through to get it as tight as I can, palm down, so that the biceps relax. Now, once I secure the gable grip, I start going into a hammer curl position. I spread my knees, I drive my chest in, I squeeze, and we get everything from there. For whatever reason this isn't working, I switch to the elbow, I go behind my head, I squeeze, and we get the head and arm triangle from there. Stay safe.